We got the warning. That's a good sign.
Okay, it's saying it's setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Let's see. Okay, I see me on YouTube. All right. Right. Definitely a bit of a delay. All right. I don't know if this is working. It's working. It's just, I don't know if they're going to see this. Okay. All right. We'll get started here and hopefully they'll be able to tune in. Thank you guys for your patience here. Robbie, I'm just making you co-host. You can stay off camera and then you can let everybody in who needs to get in. Let me let a few more people in. Thank you, Robbie. All right. And if they can't make it, we'll, oh no, well, 5 people are watching now. So this is good. I think we've got this kind of figured out. All right, let's get started. Hey everybody, Mike Kim here. Awesome to be with you all. Thank you for those of us joining. Yes, good idea. We should record the meeting. Hey everybody, Mike Kim here. Honored to be with you all today. Excited to have my buddy Jason Frazell here on with us. Jason, just give everybody a what's up. We have people here on Zoom watching. We've got folks on YouTube. Hopefully all of that is working. And those of you who are in the YouTube chat. Yes, Kathy can see us. Marissa is there. Okay, they said it's all good. Great. We are figuring this out as we go. Terrific. All right. I feel good about all this because we're just with friends and family here today, right? So we're not in dire straits if we don't do this totally perfect. But one of the things I always say to you guys is just start ugly, right? Just throw stuff against the wall, just keep going with it and just take action. A quick introduction to Jason. I've known Jason for several years now. We got to know each other through a mastermind group several years ago, and I got to know more of his work. He's a brilliant coach, facilitator, consultant, trainer. Also does some work in the personal branding space. So we had a lot of synergy there. He was a former New Yorker. So we share that level of crazy energy, I guess. And he's since moved up a little bit upstate. But Jason, just introduce yourself to everybody here watching across all the platforms. Share a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to dive right into the content.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. What else to say? I'm always a New Yorker. That's first things first. I'm a Minnesota transplant to New York, and I'll always be a New Yorker. Let's see, what else did Mike not share about me? Yeah, I get like by way of background, I spent 20 years in sales. I did some big companies. I worked at a couple of telecoms, and then I went to the startup route. So part of what we're going to talk about today is going to be from my sales background. I'm going to own it. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm speaking to a bunch of coaches, and I know some of the coaches on here, it's probably going to resonate. I felt really bored, and I hired a coach, and here we are. So we'll get into more about like what I do as we go through this. But the reason I'm here is because I was ready for something different in my life. I hired somebody just like many of you, made a huge difference in my life, and ended up sitting here talking to you about coaching and consulting engagements.
Amazing.
Funny how life works out.
Yeah, it's funny how life works out that way. I didn't even knew this this world existed. I didn't know what a consultant was. I thought you had to go to school for that or something like that. And I think by having this time together, we can kind of pull this curtain back a little bit. And again, Jason is someone I really trust. I admire his work. It speaks for itself. And that's really important, especially for those of you who trust me to bring good people to you. And I've also firsthand seen how great it can be to add an income stream to your business through corporate consulting. And this is happening for me, even though I'm someone who primarily coaches people how to leave their corporate job and start their own business. A funny story, and then I think this will tee us up for what we want to do with Jason today. Jason, a couple of years ago, I got this inquiry through my website, and they had asked me, a very, very, very well-known company asked me to come in and teach their team about personal branding. And I was like, I wonder if these guys even know they've got the wrong guy, because I'm just going to go in there and teach them all how to quit their job and become their own business owner. Yeah. And so we dialogued a little bit back and forth on email. I even hopped on a call with him. I was like very upfront with them. I'm like, look, I would love to come in and speak about personal branding to your team. It's just that when you research me online, 95% of what I share is about how to ditch your day job. I'm not sure I'm the right guy for you. And he's like, oh, thanks for letting me know. I really appreciate that. And then we didn't end up going to do it. And yet later this month, I've got an engagement with a bunch of HR leaders on personal branding. So while my content is still ensconced in teaching people to use a personal brand to build a business, that revenue stream is still open to me. And I sort of stumbled into it, sort of found me by accident. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you got started, particularly in consulting? Was that first, or did you find that after coaching? What did that look like for you?
Parallel path. And I think for many of us on here, there's a thin line between coaching and consulting, depending on what the client wants. Mike, you call yourself a coach, but then we know you do consulting and vice versa. Similar to me. So when I started my coaching journey, one of the first things I did was get hired by my friend who was a founder of a startup to coach, and I use coach in air quotes, one of his sales reps, because what he wanted me to do was fix her. And for those who are like certified coaches and you've done through coaching work, that's not really coaches' jobs, is to fix people. And so that's when I realized that there was a thin line. But I think I started doing both of those. And the reason that was an easy move for me as a coach consultant is because I spent 20 years in sales. And for all of you who have thriving businesses, which I know many of you do and will, people hire you for what they know you for. So he knew that I was in sales. He knew that I was doing my own thing. And that's how I got my start in that. And part of my business is doing sales consulting work with startups, because it's quite frankly, it's easy for me, which I like doing easy things, not going to lie.
One of the things I've heard you say, and I'd love for you to elaborate on this. We have folks who are consultants or want to open up that income stream. And I think a key in what you said just now is that you talked about what you do to the people who know you. I've heard you say oftentimes the people who hire you are not the people you know directly. Yeah. There may be 1 or 2 degrees out. Can you elaborate on that? And if anyone on Zoom or on YouTube, you've experienced that, like throw it in the chat, because we'd love to kind of converse around that. I've found that to be true. Yeah. This engagement I have later in the month is through someone in one of my own mastermind groups. I don't know him. She recommended me. Can you talk about what that looked like for you?
Yeah. And I'd love to dialogue around this, because I'm guessing this is a similar experience. And we're going to peel back the curtain today. So what happened for me is I went out and shared with people through just connection, LinkedIn, what I was doing. And then I got really frustrated because no leads came in my way. No referrals came in my way. And then I got even more frustrated because I'm a salesperson at heart. And so I continued doing the same thing and thought that everybody hated me. Like, that's the truth. I'm looking at Ellen over here, who probably can, the happiness stuff over there. And like, what's wrong with me? Am I not a good trained coach? Do I not provide results? And made it all about me. And then one day my coach said to me, why are you making this all about you? Just keep doing what you're doing. And what I decided to do was to ask people who they knew that I could talk to. And then didn't get any results again and got really frustrated. But as most of us who are in personal development do, we build that muscle over time. And then I've said to those people when I was talking to, hey, who else do you know who might be interested in what I do? And through that, I call like the third level of connection. And this isn't how it's going to go for everybody all the time. This is just my experience, is most of my referrals now come from, hey, I heard about you from Robbie. I don't know you, but I heard about you from Robbie, and Robbie and I vaguely know, we know each other, been in rooms together. I know about you from Robbie. I'd like to talk to you. And those conversations are usually the most powerful because they don't know anything about me other than what might be on my website, what they might have heard on a podcast, and how I show up on that call. Versus, hey, my good friend wants to hire me as a coach and they also know me as a salesperson. Well, then that's going to be usually a different conversation. So that was my initial experience. And I'm finding that is more and more the case. I just got, it's a private client, just got hired from somebody I knew from a networking group whose wife was in a Facebook group and they were looking for somebody to do some career work with them. They put my name out there, don't know the person's spouse, don't know the person. They reached out and here we are. So that's private client, but I've had that experience in corporate work as well. So it's generally the people that don't know me well that I have the best conversations with and generally get hired by the most.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, Mike, if we're going to die, I'm curious if anybody else has had a similar experience or a different experience. You can put it in the chat, like Mike said.
Yeah, and I can definitely attest to that. One of my real big early consulting gigs was with a credit union out in Arizona, very well known in the Southwest. And I was brought in on that project through somebody I met in a mastermind group. He was actually a consultant doing a lot of strategic planning with organizations, and his client was going through a rebrand. And he said, I would love to bring you in on this. What's the fee? I want to work together with you on it. I think it could set you up for some really big things with them down the road, or just another thing to hang your hat on. And again, that was somebody I knew who he didn't hire me. He had the client he knew hire me. Like I just said, this earlier example, it's somebody that I knew in a mastermind group. It feels like for me, my process has been get into smaller rooms, get into smaller containers, establish myself and the value that I can bring to that container, have content that people can look at, that can check out and vouch for me, right? And establish my authority. And then I just become referable to people. That's kind of what I've seen happen in my own experience. When you have that initial conversation with somebody, what are some mistakes that you made early on or wish that you had in the bag ready to go? And I know, again, you come from a sales background, so maybe you're just good at winging it. For the rest of us who may not know that, were there any things that you were like, gosh, I wish I had this before I talked to this person? Or I'm glad I had this before I talked to this person. Anything along those lines that you can unpack for us?
Well, first of all, it was all perfect from day one, and that's just no, not at all. So for those who know Enneagram, I know some of you do here, I'm an Enneagram 7, which means I get really excited about possibility and getting overly excited, especially when we're going to talk about corporate consulting and coaching engagements now, where depending on the size of the company, the person you're talking to is not a decision maker. They are a fact finder. And they give you a whole bunch of buying signs or positive, hey, this sounds great. And you get excited. I forgot about that for my sales days and got really excited about I learned like all these things all over again, running my own business. So first thing is, who are you talking to? And what authority, like what is their stake in the process? I'm speaking to somebody this morning, actually, has perfect timing for this. She's in HR. She's not getting coaching, but she's hiring coaches for their partners. It's an advertising agency, private advertising agency with partners. And I asked her, I said, well, what do you have? What's in this for you? And she said, getting these people good coaches and seeing our business grow is really good for my career. And I sign the checks. So I know that she signs the checks. So they're actually trusting her to do it. So they've given her so in that case, she would be the decision. She's not the decision maker on the coaches. That's for the coach and coachee to decide together. But she did say, it's my budget, comes out of HR. Knowing where the money's coming from is always a good thing. I think most of you likely know that. And another mistake that I still make sometimes is not understanding their process. Oh, we're going to hire coaches. It's going to happen in September 1st. And it's August 10th. No contracts, no money. I'm sure most of us have been through this. And not understanding, are you talking to other people? Like, what would the success look like? How do you know you're going to go forward to this? Does it still need to go up to the CFO? All the kind of things you would need answers to that in the midst of excitement, I know that I lose quickly because I'm excited about the opportunity and doing these work with these great people. That's one of them. And then the second one is not understanding their culture. Like companies have different languages. Mike, I know some of the people you've done work for, they have very specific language they use, and making sure you just understand that going in. What's the context of the language that they use? I always like to use Target because I worked at Target in high school. Anybody know what we're called at Target? People shopping at Target are called?
I used to work at Target. I forgot that.
Yeah. We are all called guests when we are at Target. If you go to, and I'm from Minnesota where Target's based, if you go into Target corporate and you say, what do your customers do? They will escort you out of the building. So just knowing that, and you can usually find that out through, if it's a public company, through a 10K, stock reports. If it's a private company, sometimes I'll ask the stakeholder. Mistake that I made a lot is somebody who might be bringing you in to meet with people. Hey, what do you like? What are some jargon, or what are some things that I should know about the culture to be the most impactful coach consultant for this engagement for you? And they'll tell you, because they don't want you to look foolish either if they're bringing you in. I think those are off the top of my head some of the mistakes I would love to tell you I'd never make anymore, but still a work in progress.
I love that we're talking a little bit about that part of the process. Did you ever go and hunt for consulting opportunities? Do you know people who do? And if you do, like, what works well? Because we do have some folks who are, I'm more like let things come to me kind of person, but I have another part of the business that affords me the opportunity to do that, the liberty to do that. There are others who primarily want to coach or consult or facilitate in corporate settings, and they need to be active in prospecting. What have you seen work well in the industry? You mentioned LinkedIn wasn't always a great thing for you, but that's where a lot of people are. Any insights you can give us on that side of things?
Mike, you may kill me, but you may kill me or you may not, but I say speak for free. If your intention, and if you're a speaker and that's part of your revenue stream, don't speak for free. If you're a speaker with the intention to have people get their experience of you, and you get an opportunity to get in front of the right audience, speak on. So for example, at Mike's masterminds, I've seen some of you speak there, chance to speak there. Wonderful experience. If you have the opportunity, if not, I don't do a lot of cold calling either because I have multiple things I do. So it doesn't come to me like it's not just easy, but I'm not going out and hunting. I know coaches and consultants that are very successful on LinkedIn. It's just not the thing that I've ever explored or really want to go down the road with right now. But I would say if you're going to use that, and I'm thinking about somebody else in the call who I know, you probably want to have a more specific offer than, hey, I could coach your team, framework, some sort of program. And again, I don't have any programs. I can create programs. I'm not going out and saying, hey, this is my 12-step process to have your partners at the advertising agency be better at their job. That's not how I do my coaching practice. And I know a lot of really amazing coaches who do the opposite. They have a program or specific framework. My gut would tell me that you would need something specific if you're going to do more. And I'm hearing Mike, like cold calling, like cold LinkedIn messages, cold emailing, buying an email list, maybe even calling. You would need likely something more than, hey, I'm an executive coach and I'd like to talk to you about what it would look like to work with your team. I could be wrong though. I'm curious if anybody on here has had a different experience with that.
Yeah, I'm reading one of the comments here over on YouTube from Marissa, and she said the difference, like, that's spot on. That's the difference between a public speaker who's often free and a professional speaker who's paid for gigs. I would say that I lean more to the public speaking. I am a brand consultant and a business coach, run a marketing agency. The majority of my speaking engagements have been done for free. But I view that as a lead generation party. I'm being paid for this engagement at the end of this month in front of these HR directors, but I'm saying I don't really care about the engagement. I care about the dinner I'm having with everybody Monday night, because then that's where I want to land certain engagements. this is happening in real time for me. One of the things I'm trying to do is at least prepare my LinkedIn profile to speak to those people. So I've at least queued up quote like text-based content on LinkedIn for the rest of the month. You can queue, I think, a month up to a month of content on LinkedIn, like schedule it in advance. So right now I'm just doing a text-based quote on Mondays. And then on Thursdays, I'll post a short form video tailored for that audience. Just kind of giving you guys the background on that. I don't plan to post anything from my YouTube channel. I'm going to post videos of me speaking at other conferences where I actually dress up, not like I am today, like where I'm dressed in a more professional setting. Right. And I want to show anyone who's attending that event, or in case they announced me as a speaker at the event, I'm actually the first session. So I'm keynoting. So it's a big deal. I want them to see the attendees who, like, if they tag Mike Kim in this event, I want them to go to my LinkedIn and I want them to see it. I feel like I'm about to go to a wedding and I need to get dressed and prep everything like on my LinkedIn channel. And that's, I guess, Jason, like that's what I know to do, at least up till right now, as a marketing guy and somebody who's in the space. I just know I don't want them to feel they've just landed on the wrong guy. Is this the right Mike Kim? How could he be speaking at our HR event? He's got content all over the place about how to quit your day job. So like at least for this month leading up to it, I'm trying to post regular content, at least push down everything else I've posted in the past, to kind of set myself up for that. Do you ever, like when you go to these engagements, do you ever have access to who's going to be there or know who's going to be in the room and try to connect on LinkedIn or these other platforms ahead of time? Or or has that just not been something you've had to think about?
I don't know the specific people,
Mm-hmm.
but I will always ask if it's a new coaching engagement or like a chance to speak to people. I'll always ask the person who's brought me in, because we always have to remember the person that's bringing this in, this is almost as big a deal for them as it is for Mike. Because if Mike bombs, that's on that person. Mike, we know you're not going to bomb. So I just asked them, like, what would make this a 10 out of 10? Really simple question, or 10 out of 10, or what would make this event great? And then I like to ask the second question is, like, what do you think going to be are some of the roadblocks to having it be a 10 out of 10? Knowing what you know about the audience. So a good example, if I do like a sales work, is salespeople are distracted a lot. They got emails. For those who do virtual work, and I do a ton of virtual work, and this is more of a training thing, but hey, what's the culture of cameras? Oh, well, we actually don't require cameras if you're speaking virtually. Okay, so we know that most people are going to be off camera. It doesn't mean they're not paying attention. It might mean that, but I know that I can see you all looking here and not multitasking. So knowing that ahead of time is like, oh, well, we know when we do, in the past, we've had speakers that they came in and they kind of talked at us and they kind of taught us, but then there was no takeaways, no action items, and it didn't really land. Great. So how can I make sure that you do that? So Mike, for you, I know you're good at this. So that if you get that feedback, you're going to come in with the exact opposite. Here's leave behinds, here's things, here's ways to connect with me. Oh, the speaker, one of the things I've heard is, well, the person didn't feel very personal, and like they kind of felt like they came in, they dropped into the event and they were gone. Great. How would you like me to do it? Would it be okay if I told them I wanted to connect with LinkedIn? What if I offered a 20-minute call with people? Like all of these things that have people get more of an experience of us. And you only know that if you ask, which comes from my sales background, is asking is always better than assuming. 90.
Yeah, I love that. Like one of the things I did this earlier this year, this was more of a speaking engagement. It was a paid speaking engagement in a niche that was totally outside of my normal world. It was for higher ed. It was a marketing conference for colleges and universities. And so they found me so random, a YouTube video of me speaking at Social Media Marketing World. It's the only lead and engagement I've ever remembered that I got from YouTube. Okay, so that much said, while we're broadcasting on YouTube, right? And I'm trying to grow that channel, they found a talk that I did at Social Media Marketing World that I broadcast on my channel. They contacted me, asked me to come to Disney to speak there. I did the gig, and I didn't know a single person at this event at all. I reached out to get the landing page for the event, and I saw all the other speakers, and I was like, cool. They posted all their LinkedIn profiles. So I followed every single one of them on LinkedIn, DM'd them and said, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you speak at Carnegie conference. I'll be there as well. If you'd like to connect before or after a session, would love to just hang out and get to know a little bit more about you. So when I look at that engagement, I know I'm talking about speaking. My mindset is, how do I shrink the room? Every time I go into an opportunity like that, I'm always trying to shrink the room. Okay. For those who take notes, I think that's a good principle to follow. How can I shrink the room wherever I go? The second thing I did was, there were 3 people that I saw on that speaker list that I heard of before or heard of their companies before. So there was a guy named Dennis. I'd heard of him. He was in the marketing world. Someone from a pretty high up position at TikTok, which I thought would make sense for me in my industry, just knowing the market. And then there was one other person I had heard of. And I texted a guy that I knew who's very well connected, just business wise. And I said, hey, I'm about to speak at this event in a couple of weeks. And these are a few of the speakers. Do you happen to know any of them? And he goes, yeah, I know that guy. He's like, text him and tell him you know me so that you guys meet up. I was like, oh, this is super helpful. So I DM'd this guy on LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, Dennis, this is Mike. My buddy Dave knows you. He said, oh, I love Dave. We've been connected the whole year. Like, so I've done stuff like that where I'm just continually trying to shrink the room. I plan to do that at this event. These are speaking engagements, albeit. But I remember when I went on that consulting gig out to Arizona, my friend who brought me in on the project told me who the head of marketing was, and she's now the vice president of the company. So she got promoted in the year since. She wrote me a great review about our consulting time together. And that is somebody who I would probably, if I had to and wanted to find more opportunities, could follow up with. Hey, Kathy, how are you doing? It's been a few years since we worked on the project together. I've checked out the website. It looks like you guys are doing great. Just wanted to touch base and see how you're doing. And I could start a dialogue that way. Have you done anything post-engagement at all?
Yeah, there you said a bunch of things that brought up some things, but to answer your question, I always post engagement, there's always going to be follow-up in terms of, if I'm coaching individual coachees inside of an organization, I always personally follow up with each of them, which has resulted in more work for me. Because a lot of these companies, their HR department, and so here's a little secret, if you haven't had a chance to experience this yet, I'll give you an example of an engagement I'm on right now. Comes out of the learning and development budget. Great. Guess what? If somebody really wants to work more with you, guess what budget it comes out of? Their team budget, which is a different money. And these people work in sales, and sales always has money to spend on stuff that they think can make them more sales. So yes, to the follow-up on coachees, always follow up with the stakeholder, the person who hired you, about, well, I'll ask something like, we always do it first of all, and this is, I'm sure you all do this too, is like a debrief. What did you think? Was the value there? What's your intention going forward? Do you plan to do this again? Do you plan to do it with me? Would you like me to work with you on some things that I observe that would be better, that I think we could improve for next time, adding assessment work or having the coaches prepare more? And this is kind of like a more free-form coaching engagement. There's always some sort of follow-up, some sort of posting. And then always if you're not connected with every single person on LinkedIn, it's just a huge miss. Because if you've coached somebody or they've hired you, they will connect with you on LinkedIn. And you'll become like a trusted connection that they actually know you.
I love what you said there about budgets. I was actually going to ask this, and then we'll get to a question that Susan has. You've mentioned a couple of budgets so far: sales, education budget. Can you give us a kind of an overview of like the different kind of budgets that are out there? I think that makes sense if you're a sales coach or sales trainer, sales consultant, maybe
Mhm.
comes through the sales budget. What are some of the budgets that we should be aware of that are kind of out there?
Yeah, it really depends on the size of the company, of course. If you're talking to a startup, the budget's going to be like the founder going to the board and being, hey, I need 25,000. Yeah, I need
Yeah.
25 grand to do this thing. If you're talking about a larger company, it's generally going to, well, this is one thing I always like to know is, do you have a learning and development team? And one of the questions I ask is, what has you bringing in external coaches versus doing this internally? If you already have, because a lot of tech firms, for example, they have coaches internally, but they still hire external coaches for specific things. I like to understand what for, is it a skill set, scalability, etc. So learning and development, if they have that team, if they don't have that team, then it's going to either come from the line of business, meaning if you're coaching a bunch of VPs in manufacturing on the factory floor, it's going to come from their line, or HR is going to pay for it. Usually doesn't really matter where it comes from as long as everybody's bought in. Where you run into problems though is when, I'm sure most of you have experienced this as well, is where the people get really excited, they want to work with you, and then there's no money. There's no money. Go to HR and well, we spent our personal development budget for the year, or they misunderstood. I've been fortunate to work with a couple of startups where they gave their employees it was like only like $4,000 a year to do whatever they want, and so they could hire a coach and spend $4,000 on a coach if they wanted. That's really nice because then it's not even the company budget. They're like, it's like a benefit. That's even easier because then you just talk to the coach, and if they like you, they can hire you. So that is primarily where they come from, and that's one of the first things I like to find out when you meet with the initial person. The initial person, it isn't always their budget. That's the key point here. It's not always their budget. So, for example, if you're meeting with HR and they're like vetting your program or something that they want to roll out, that would be the question: is, hey, like, is this something that you're going to pay for out of like learning development, out of HR, or is this something that then you're going to have to go and sell to the chief revenue officer? How could I help you with that? Because they're never going to sell it as well as we are. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Love that. That's super helpful. I want to go get to a question that Susan asked here in the chat. What are some kinds of work you would do as a quote coach for your team? Coming into an organization, you're maybe coaching. What does that look like for you with like behind closed doors? I've seen folks like, the guy brought me in on that project. He's doing strategic planning. I was brought in to do the marketing rollout and provide strategy for their rebrand. So there was that. It was like, we did 2 engagements. One was with their marketing team where I literally coached them through the strategy of how to roll things out. And this was way harder. The second meeting was way harder because it was with all of their C-suite people, and I had to pitch that strategy to the C-suite. I was like, oh gosh, we need to definitely get a whiskey after this day's over, because they were just like, we're not going to give you any affirmation or feedback on whether we like this or not. Just totally stone faced, and they weren't even Asian. So what's some of the work that you do with folks, kind of especially in a team dynamic?
Yeah, Susan, you're in the middle of my screen, so I'm looking at you right now. When you say work with a team, are you talking about like pure coaching work that's more like facilitation? Or are you talking more about maybe a project-based thing with a specific outcome? Like, can you give me a little more context around what you're asking?
Yeah, and Susan, we'll spotlight you, so feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you talk about, because I understand the usual distinction between coaching and consulting. I've been a consultant and I am a coach now. And coaching to me represents more working one-on-one, sort of in a mentor fashion, dealing with encouraging better leadership or encouraging a team player, a team person to work out better, work through their problems. I was wondering what you had in mind when you talk about a coach for your team, because I'm really not sure where you're focused.
Yeah, I'm not sure when I said that.
Sales, maybe. Also sales, by the way,
Ah,
course sales.
yeah. So having somebody, thanks, Susan. It's still one-on-one work, but you're hired to work with multiple people on the team.
Mhm.
That's what I meant by that. Those are, I think, less common in my experience, and I only have my experience, partially because we're never going to be the one for everybody. So in a team of 10, it's highly unlikely all 10 people are going to be like, Jason's the best coach for me, which I appreciate. I don't really want to work with people that aren't for me either. What I would say, if we're talking, Susan, it sounds like you're a coach, so you get this, like the group coaching. When we do that, there's usually a specific outcome. How to be more productive, like something that's pretty tangible. But what ends up happening, and since you're coached, you know this, what ends up happening is you usually end up in a conversation about more emotional feelings, personalities, what's working, what's not. That's actually below the thing that they're seeing as like the objective measure of it. I haven't done a whole lot of those. And again, just being totally upfront about it, a lot of that work comes from like assessment work, like DISC or Clifton Strengths, but that's not pure coaching. I am teaching, there's expertise there. I know more than they do. I can tell them some things they can do with it, not just asking them questions.
Interesting. I mean, I've been a sales director, a publisher, a sales director,
Yeah.
and that would be an easy thing to, I think, to accomplish. One thing I'm kind of questioning is there a place for is I'm currently teaching courses on overcoming imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Ironically enough, or happily enough, Harvard Business Review has a special edition on the newsstands right now.
Oh, really?
About imposter syndrome, which I think is wonderful for validation.
Yeah.
You know, going to that marketplace. And I'm thinking of introducing to leaders who can make such decisions how to get your people to step up into their full selves, because a lot of people hold back, right? So if you're a top manager and you've got line management, and people are just holding back because they're afraid they're not, they've got that sense of they might think I'm a fraud, that I might make a mistake. Somebody else might have express it better, whatever are the things that they're running through. And very often that expression is with people who are very accomplished. Everybody around them thinks they're, in fact, Mike and his mastermind has one of the spotlights you do is, do you call it fly on the wall, where everybody else talks about you?
Yeah, it's like the burning ears hot seat.
Burning ears. Yeah, I love that, And I'm just wondering, do you think there may be a place for that, or is that just too woo for corporate?
Yeah, this is purely my opinion, but I would love to say yes. I would think you need to have a high level of psychological safety in a corporate environment to pull that off in a way that would be meaningful. I'm hopeful that it's possible. I have not tried it. I think it would be beautiful. I think, and just to say this too, it's a little off topic, but Susan, I think it's saying the difference between coaches who hire us or choose us and coaches who are told, go to this room and hang out with this person for 4 hours, creates a very different context.
Do they even buy into what we're presenting?
Yeah, we know. I mean, let's be honest. We know, you all opted to be here. Hopefully you all are still wanting to be here, but you all, if you're in one of Mike's masterminds, we all opted into that and we pay for it. But like, sometimes employees are like, I don't want to be in this training. I don't want to work with a coach, but I've been told I need to.
Yeah.
So to go back to my earlier point about what I want to know from the HR person is, are these people told they have to work with me, or are they choosing into this program? It's a huge distinction. And I'll tell you what, we'll go to Neil next. Hi, Neil. We'll go. What I do is I'll ask the person, hey, like, I know that maybe you didn't have a total choice to be here. Are you willing to empower? See what we can create together. Like, ask them. You all are coaches here and consultants. There's nothing worse than somebody on the other side of the camera or other side of the table who does not want to be there as a coach. I forget it. I'm like, I've gotten to the point where I'll call it out. Be like, it seems like you don't want to be here. Is that okay? Would you like to reschedule? Is this like, it's the worst. I hate it because I'm an extrovert and I suck that energy in. I'm like, oh, now I need to go talk to Ellen.
I love how you'll just bring it up. That's so you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neil, Neil, I want to put you on the spotlight here. You asked a question in the chat, but I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on that. So if you can unmute yourself, brother, and fire away.
So Big Mike. Hey, Jason, nice to meet you.
Hey, what's up, Neil?
Appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm in a place now where, I have a background in sales, consulting, biz dev, right? But I'm a coach by, coach and culture has always been my thing, right? Coaching CEOs, all of them were leading, but still miserable, in their work environment, still need coaching.
All right.
Go figure.
Yeah.
So I got some opportunities now that are with financial firms, some small to medium ones, because big newsflash, they think their wealth clients aren't still happy. They're like, because they need mindset. But it's a slow process, and I'm talking myself out of some of it, because it's a lot of in the medium and small companies. I feel like you get better intimacy and you get more access to people, but they're much more busy. So it's harder for them to follow up and keep with it. And they lose interest because they lose focus, speaking as a solopreneur, right? So I just wanted to see if you have any experience here that you could lend me, or any bias towards certain companies. Obviously budget, but beyond that, right? What do you think?
Yeah. Wonderful question. Is anybody here familiar with the term of enrollment, what that means and the way it's used in the coaching? Yeah, I see Marla nodding her head yes. Neil, I'm sure I know what kind of work you do as well. I don't use that word in corporate because it's not really something that gets spoken about. But if we're talking about people being busy, as coaches, we know that busy is usually, it's a concept, it's a belief system, right? I'm too busy to do this. It's actually what it is it's a value statement. I'm too busy for coaching because I believe that me doing more emails or being in this meeting is more valuable. So this is never going to be perfect, but what I will generally like to do is ask as part of the engagement, if it's one-on-one, is to get everybody, if they're willing to do it, is like to actually do a call to talk about what we're about to do over the next 3-6 months or whatever it is. Like an intro call where they can get to know me and I can have an opportunity to talk about it in a group setting or even in a private setting, or use the first session for that to get them excited. Because how many of us who've worked in corporate got really excited about another meeting on our calendar with a person we don't know and we're not sure what we're going to talk about? Yeah, especially in sales. Neil, you're talking about a 20-year salesperson. I'm still a salesperson. Salespeople are always busy. They're either busy working really hard or they're busy not working hard. That's the way I put it. Because they're busy so that they don't have to work hard. So that would be where I would go. Is the question I would ask if you're in a corporate setting, small business, doesn't matter, is whoever you're doing business with or is bringing you in, ask them, what's the way you think we can get people most excited about this thing we're about to do, whatever the format is. I've seen this go so well. And I've seen where people do none of it. If anybody here's, show of hands, anybody ever done an engagement where there was almost no setup? It's like, we're doing this thing and then people show up and they kind of know what they're there for, but they're like, there's really no setup. Yeah, I've done those too. And some people are super into it because that's their personality, and some people could care less. So I always like to, again, what's going to make that person who's signing that check be successful? And usually it's going to have the people that are getting the service from you be excited about it and get value from it. So how do we set that up at the top versus waiting until, oh, Neil, it's our first session together. And you're like, yeah, I was told to be here. I'm not really sure. I think I'm going to do this, I've been on the receiving end of that as well. So I think that's what I have for you is how can you bring, and this is what we in the coach training that I went through and then led for a while, is called the being of coach all the time. From the first time you ever speak to somebody, like Mike, for you, the being a speaker, the being a marketing consultant, being an author, you walk into that room in the very first intro call, and it is the same experience that people are going to get with you when they're one-on-one with you as a client. And that's crucial, where you don't switch out of that mode of I'm here selling you some stuff. And then when I'm a coach, it's different. And then the same, so they can start to get that experience. And also just owning the fact that we're never, yeah, Carrie, that's perfect. And also owning the fact that we're never going to be all things to all people, and some people aren't going to dig it no matter what we do. Because Mike knows I do a lot of training work, and we have this thing we said people don't really care. They're busy thinking about their own stuff, their email box, what they're doing over the weekend has nothing to do with us, but they're never going to be into it. And one of my big breakthroughs is I don't need to win those people over. There's plenty of people who do want the work that we all do. More than enough.
Love that.
Yeah, did that answer your question, Neil?
It does. And in a perfect world, I would say if more of this could take place off site, that would get people a lot out of their heads, right? But people don't have budget for that. Anytime you get people, I used to love to take people out to lunch or dinner afterwards when I was corporate, because I never would get half the information I would get over just a cup of coffee or a meal, or just even if it was off site.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Carrie, that sounds painful.
Yeah. So Carrie, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, said it's like when a parent brings their teenager to her to care for care, and they do not want. Talk about low engagement. That's an interesting line. I'll pull on that a little bit based on what Carrie said, and we'll get to a couple more questions. Jason, I taught high school kids after school for their SATs and ACTs, college entrance exams. You want to talk about every single person there did not want to be there. Like this was like a level of horrible engagement. I mean, and I think it's actually what made me really good at what I do. Because if I could get these kids to learn and actually apply it and get results, I'm like selling them every day on why they need to be there. But now, after years of doing that, I think I've run out of juice. I've run out of patience, which is why I think I've engineered my business in a certain way to only play with house money. You know, I have people who know my content. They get to join a coaching group or mastermind, a container, come to a live event. And I'm working with house money because they already know me. That's why content's been so important for me. I could not do what you or Neil do and go into new engagements every single week. Like, I just feel like that would tire me out. It's part of the reason I didn't really seek out to become a professional speaker full time. I'll take speaking gigs if they lead back into opportunities for my business. But I'm more like, hey, I want to build something and invite all of you who want to come over to hang out. And then there are guys like you or Neil or others of you here on this call who are more like, I don't really want to do that. I want to go in, drop a bomb, and then leave. How do you manage your energy around that? Like, I'm so interested in that. Are you just like tunnel vision, not in a bad way, but you're super focused? Like, you don't care about the reciprocation of the energy, or you love meeting new people that much? Like, where's that come from? How do you manage all that?
Yeah. In terms of like different engagements and meeting a lot of new people and coaching new people, like those sort of things.
Yeah. Like, for example, like I'm super worked up about this engagement at the end of the month. I don't know a single person that's going to be there. They're not going to know me. So I'm like, okay, gosh, I have to start from scratch right off the first bat of the keynote. You know, other events I go speak at, it's easy. They're like, oh, we heard of this Mike Kim guy. He's great. Or the conference host knows me. So they tee me up and I'm like, great. This is just playing with house money. And it stresses me out, honestly. I'm like, what am I going to wear? What are my slides going to look like? Everything. How do you manage all that?
Man.
Just
great,
you?
Great. No, well, so yeah, I'm going to make this about me, but I think I have for those of you who know me, like I have a pretty unique, it's not a unique personality, but yeah, Todd, exactly. I'm an Enneagram 7. I'm 100% extroverted. I've been told my superpower is I'm willing to try almost anything, along with not being a perfectionist, which is true, which is why Mike, you're like, yeah, we're going to test this. I'm like, cool, great. Let's see how it goes. And you're looking at, I mean, you all, and I am not perfect either. Some of you have businesses arguably better than mine. Like, I'm not here to say like I have the answers. What I will say is that you're looking at somebody with a lot of training and a lot of personal development work to bring focus and drive when I need to, and to take the foot off the pedal when I need to, without it being the burnout sales cycle, which is what I did for 20 years, which is why I'm here today. And also to take a look at Like I just have a lot of great like well-being practices that I have that keep me like speaking to you all is sourcing for me. This is something that really fills me up. So those sort of things. On the other side of that though, Mike, if you said, hey, I'm going to go have you meet with these 8 people and none of them want to be there, I'd need a nap after probably the second person.
Yeah.
So it's also taken me a while to figure out like where I'm like what kind of companies I like to work for. Again, these conversations of like when the HR person says like these people are opting in and they're gonna pick from 6 coaches, that excites me because I'm like, wait, the piece of purpose picks me. They want to be there with me. Like that's exciting. Those things coupled with the kind of companies like I like tech, like big tech, small tech. I come from the tech background, but I'm finding I also like all those and just like knowing I know what I like. And I know the kind of people that I generally vibe with. And that gives me energy. People give me energy. I'm just created that way. And then it's coupled with things like Mike knows, like things that I do to source myself, play guitar, take walks, hang out with the dog. We have a young family, do those things that like to keep the balance. Cause my old me didn't do that. Go in sales. And then the result is blah. Like I said, I was never the CEO, Neil, but I was definitely like, hey, it did really well. I'm like, this isn't fun. Yeah. I know coach a lot of people like that. Those are the people that need us the most, I think.
We have a couple of questions here that are overlapping. So I think these are going to be really good. Evelyn had asked, how much do you share about, your process to HR, whoever is making the decision? And then Marissa sort of piggybacked on that. How much customization is needed for each corporate workshop or ongoing programs? I know you're not a content person per se. You don't teach the content. But do you see a lot of folks like us who need to tweak things, or can you pretty much standardize it? Can you share a little bit about how much that's involved?
Yeah, I'm going to clarify one thing about myself. I love teaching and iterating other people's stuff. I hate creating from scratch. So like somebody like Mike and many of the other people on this call, I'm so envious. That is not a thing I bring. So Evelyn, did you mean the person's progress or
process?
Progress.
Sorry,
Okay.
Your process. Like how much do you share about your process?
My process with the person or the person's progress through our coaching work?
Process to the company. Yeah.
Yeah. Evelyn,
I'm trying to.
Well, yeah,
Evelyn,
looking at
you can
Evelyn's
jump on if you want. Yeah.
Progress.
Person's progress. Great.
It depends on how this is set up. Those of you who are professionally trained coaches, meaning you've gone through a coach training program, will know that confidentiality is 101. And so I will ask the person putting together the program, what does success look like? And what do you expect from me? In terms of, would you like to do a check-in call? And I'll say, hey, what would you like to talk? I was, again, showing up as coach. What would you like to talk about, Evelyn? I'd like to talk about the client's progress. Evelyn, what kind of information would you like from me? Or I'd like to hear how's she doing on that project? Actually, as part of my coaching agreement, it's in my contract. We don't talk about confidential information. I am happy to share with you general vibes, how I believe people are doing, but we don't go into details. And like, that's a hard line for me. In a coaching engagement, consulting can be different because consulting is usually generally like a more objective thing. But in a coaching engagement, I've never had anybody ask for specifics though. The person I was talking to today that wants the partner one, I said, what would make this? And she gave me a lot of background on this one partner that they're having some problems with. And I said, what would you like for me? Coach, he goes, well, after 3 months, I like to talk to you, but really I just want to observe and see that he's making changes. I'd like to be able to see it. And she said, and I would never expect you to do it. If somebody who hires you for an engagement and it's coaching and they ask for specifics, they probably don't fully understand what coaching is. That's where I would look and clarify consulting. And Susan, looking at you as somebody who's done both this work. Hey, like this is consulting. We can do assessments. So I can give you objective. The coaching work is a private conversation, just like it would be with your therapist or with an attorney or something else. Not legally protected, of course, but that's the line that I say. I've never had anybody push back on that. They actually appreciate it. Because what coachee is going to bring their truth if they know you're going to go back to HR or go back to learning and development and be like, and by the way, Ellen said this today. She's looking for a new job. Like she's not going to bring that. It's actually the first thing I say to a new client if private or via corporate, I'll say, hey, just let you know this is completely confidential. And this is agreement, this is part of the company. And that'll open people up. Coach snitch, exactly.
Coach snitch.
I like it.
Bleeding back into Marissa's question, is there a lot of customization that you do? Is every engagement different? Do you kind of work from a mise en place, if you will, like a set thing, and then kind of pick your ingredients and all that? How's that work for you?
Yeah, so most of the work that I do and have done, it's generally like one-on-one executive coaching work, which is, it doesn't really need to be customized because we're not doing a program. We're doing, I see Marla, you're nodding your head there. It's like I'm paired with Marla. We're going to meet every other week and we're going to work through these things. What I would say is, again, this goes back to how it's set up. Are we going to work through a program? Like I do a lot of assessment stuff too. Are we going to use those assessments? If so, are we then going to do a team workshop with assessments? Like, are we going to do a team disc workshop or something, making something up? And that might be a customization in terms of the scheduling. But because I'm not teaching a framework, I don't really have to do much customization. I will say, in my experience, if you're dealing with learning and development, they generally will tell you how it's going to go. If you're dealing with a smaller company who's never hired a coach, they may say, hey, what would you suggest? I'll give you a real life example from one of my larger clients. You're getting 15 coachees. They each get 3 sessions. We're paying you this per session. You can book them between May and September and send me your scheduling link, and they're going to book into your time. That's it. I love those. That's easy. They just book time and we meet and it's great. The opposite could be, hey, we want to get some coaching for our partners, but we're not exactly sure how. What would you suggest? Would you suggest we meet weekly, bi-weekly? Should we do assessments? And then that's where the coaching partnership is like, well, what's the impact going to be? Larger companies will generally tell you how it's going to go. And then they'll generally tell you the rate. Especially there's a bunch of coaches in there and they say, hey, we're paying you $3.50 an hour, take it or leave it. Because we got 5 other people who would love to do this gig. If it's something that you're suggesting or you're cold calling and they're looking to build something with you, I would say customize in any way you can. And if it's executive coaching, you don't need to customize. Coaches, we don't need to customize anything. We just show up for people and have conversations. There should be no customization. Right? The customization happens in real time. That's the way I say it.
Love that. I want to field a few more questions before we let Jason go here, but and I know we're working with folks that we all know already, but if any of you are interested in working with Jason, maybe in a smaller setting, like a mastermind that he and I run together, what I'll do is I will send a link to an application, especially if you want to do more in corporate consulting. If you're already in a mastermind group with me and you want to move into a group like that with Jason, that's easy. We can just slide you over. But we'll get that out. I'm also thinking about doing, and this is not for Jason because he would not work these hours. But I'm also thinking about, we have so many people from Australia and they're like, yo, dude, it is like 2:00 in the morning or whatever time it is. I'm actually thinking about opening a small group for that part of the world. So I'm letting you guys know now, we have so many people from that part of the globe, which is actually pretty cool. I'll follow up via email because I've been chewing on this for a while. I actually kind of want to do it. Plus, it would give me an excuse to have to go to Australia, Jason. Maybe you come with me on that trip. We're going to Africa probably
also,
together anyways.
I couldn't wait to have the conversation with my wife about, hey, I got this 2 a.m. thing once every 2 weeks. Hope that's cool with you.
Yeah, we're doing an Australia.
As long as you're up with a 3-year-old, that's fine.
Yeah, it's great. There are 2 questions that kind of overlap between Lillian's and Ellen's.
Yeah.
Lillian asked, how do you know when you're good enough to speak? And then Ellen asked, how do you differentiate between a speaking engagement that's a good idea because of exposure and connection, and like the brand play versus not being paid? How have you navigated those 2 things?
The second question from Ellen, I think, Mike, you are much better equipped to answer than me. I can give it a shot, but I just don't think I think you'd add a lot more value there. The first question about how do you know when you're good enough to speak? What a wonderful coaching question.
I love it, Lillian.
No, it's such a good, it's such a like, all right, let's book an hour session to talk about how do you know when you're going to, and it'd be purely hypothetical. It would depend on for those who do speaking, and our friend Michael Port, that's how Mike and I got connected through somebody through Hurl Public Speaking. Michael has a thing. He has a book called The Referable Speaker. He talks about if you ever want to get paid a lot, you need to have the fee structure. Expertise pays the lowest. Expertise plus entertainment pays pretty well. Expertise plus entertainment plus famous equals big paydays. So think of somebody like Peyton Manning or like a president. Like that's why they get paid these big bucks, because they're all three of those. So I'd have you take a look at where you might land in there in terms of like your content. In terms of the skill of speaking, I don't know. Maybe go to Toastmasters, get some free, easy feedback. Go to practice with a friend. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can do it. Bring it, for those who are in Mike's community, bring it into a mastermind and use that. Use your time to, hey, I want to run 10 minutes of this thing I've been working on with you. Give me some honest feedback. I mean, speaking, I train speakers through one of my training things, and most people are talented enough already. There's just little things that people work on. That's it. Just like anything else.
Yeah, the speaking thing, it's sort of like the age-old joke, like 80% of drivers think they're above average. The math doesn't work, right? Like, just think about that for a second. Just let that register. And I found that to be true of speakers and podcasters as well. Everyone thinks that they're better than they are, which means that if you're worried about being good, you're probably better than most of them, honestly.
Yeah.
So, and then to kind of bleed into, so that's Lillian for you. I think you're probably good enough.
Yeah.
And then you get the reps in and you do better. And then in the beginning of my career, it was an automatic green light. Anytime a speaking engagement came, big or small, it was a green light. Now it's a yellow. I'm more discerning about it. In certain times of business, when I was really busy, like, for example, a book launch, it was all red. I was like, I can't give any of this. So Ellen and Lillian, what I would say there to that point, just say yes to everything early on, because it doesn't matter who you speak for early on. What matters is that you speak, and people start to associate you with being a speaker or someone who happens to speak. And then you get the expertise, you solidify what you're sharing, you build expertise in the craft of speaking. And then I think you learn to be a little bit more entertaining. I've put my foot in my mouth a few times along those routes, and I'm not famous, but I think that there's a buildup to that. So early on, I just said yes to everything. And then I'd be asked back to certain events, and I was like, yeah, if they're not paying for it, or at least covering costs, I'm probably not going to do it. There are other engagements I've said yes to out of just favors for friends. And to kind of tie a button on all this, this is why I'm so big on building a business that really affords you the opportunities to be generous. Like, if you only do things that you are only paid for, right? Then that closes you off from a lot of opportunities that could reveal themselves otherwise. Now, I think, Jason, like in your scenario, when a company calls you in, they have money. So you're not just doing a freebie. No. But if it's like with collaborators or other opportunities where they're not paying out, but I can get the prestige for speaking or prestige by being associated with their brand, I would do it. I would have done the one later this month for free. Don't tell them, but I would have done it for free. Because I'm like, oh, brand new network. It's up to me to close deals. I'm okay with that. I feel comfortable doing that. If I get an HR gig out of that, amazing. But if I don't, I'm paid for my time, and it's a plus on the balance sheet. So I look at it like that. And I'm speaking at a friend's event in October. It's a smaller mastermind, not a huge thing, and not my niche, but he's a friend and I want to be there for him. I said, yes, just if you can cover my airfare, great. It's not that expensive. And he's like, yeah, sure. And who knows, maybe I land a client out of that. Who knows? Right. But yeah. So, all right. Let's all give it up for Jason, dude. Thank you so much. Incredible. Thanks. Some of you are in a mastermind with him on this call, so you guys just get all the goodness from him already. But I'm going to fire off a link to everyone in case you are interested in working with us. We'll start probably later in the year in September. So it's just August now. So no rush on that. And we'll get all that information out to you. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, hope that it was a decent experience and I did it right. We had double the amount of people on both. So this is very cool. So I think it was worth it. So, and thank you for everybody who was here on Zoom. All right. I'll get this recording processed and then we will be good to go. Jason, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful to be with you all. Good coaching out there. Yeah, let's connect on LinkedIn if we're not already.
Yep. I'll send the link to all you guys here. We'll put it in the comments of the YouTube video and away we go. All right. Peace out, everybody. Have a wonderful day.